this webinar, and that's so that we can share this information with other people who aren't able to attend today, but will find the information useful. So we're going to go ahead and record, and we'll make sure at the end to let you know where to find material about the evaluation, including the recording. Great. So hi to all of you. My name's Jessica Hepburn. I'm the project director for the Comprehensive Literacy Program Evaluation, which includes an ongoing study of an ongoing evaluation of the Striving Readers Comprehensive Literacy Grants. And some of us have met about that evaluation. And now the newly launched study of CLSD. So we're thrilled to be here with you, and we welcome you to our session today. So we'll go ahead and get started and just quickly go over our agenda. There are 4 parts to our session today. So first we'll do introductions and give you an overview of the CLSD National Evaluation. Second, we'll describe the CLSD impact study in more detail, and that's where we'll focus the bulk of our time. Then we'll talk about next steps and questions and answers. We have 90 minutes with time for Q&A at the end. After introductions, what we'll do to make sure we have good sound for everyone is mute everyone so that we can present the content without competing with background noise. But we don't want you to hold your questions all the way until the end. Please feel free to use that chat box in your GoToMeeting window to type your questions as they come up. And we'll pause at various points to read those questions that come along and then provide answers to them in that moment, or if we know that we're covering material that helps address those questions, we'll cover that and come back to those questions. We want to make sure that your questions are answered along the way and fully answered by the time we get to the end. So we'll unmute everyone when we get to the Q&A portion of the webinar so that then people can ask their questions either by phone or by the chat. All right. So in this first section, we'll first do introductions, and then we'll present the national evaluation goals and describe the 2 components of the national evaluation. So before we get going, I'd like to introduce the participants, and we'll start here so you know who's in the room, and then we'll go around as we get to our next slide. We have with us the leadership team from the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. Cindy Savage, who I think you all know, is in the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. She's the team lead for CLSD and for Circle previously. Cindy, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everybody.
Great. And Sylvia Lyles is here with us, the director of the Office of Academic Improvement in the Department of Education's Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. Sylvia, welcome, and feel free to say hello.
Hi, everybody. I look forward to working with you.
Great. And Tracy Rimjes is next from the Institute of Education Sciences. Tracy oversees the national evaluation of Circle and CLSD for the U.S. Department of Education.
Hi everyone.
Great. Next to Tracy, we have Mike Garrett from American Institutes for Research, AIR, who leads the CLSD national evaluations.
Hello.
Hello. And then we're going around the table. We have Ellie Fullbeck from AIR, who co-leads the CLSD national evaluation with Mike and with me.
Hi everyone.
And again, I'm Jessica Hepburn from AIR, and I work with Mike and Ellie and our team here, as well as our partners in a couple of other organizations to direct the CLSD national evaluation. And again, welcome to all of you. So next, we'd like to see which states are participating today. We want to start with congratulations on winning your CLSD grant awards. We're going to unmute everyone for this part so that people can say hello, but it'll help to cut down on the background noise if folks could mute themselves when you're not speaking. And what we thought we would do is go down the list of states in alphabetical order and see if someone's here from each state. We know some people probably can join couldn't join right at the beginning, so it's okay if we have to skip a state and come back to it. But as we call out the state name, please say your name and your role on the CLSD grant. So we'll start with Alaska.
Hi, this is Deb Riddle from Alaska. I am going to be helping Tammy Van Wy, who's with me here as well, work on the grant.
Yeah, Tammy Van Wy, I'm Division Director at Alaska Department of Education and Early Development, and we will be hiring staff to assist with the grant, but that's still in the works.
Excellent. Welcome. Welcome to you both. Next is Arkansas.
Hey, I'm Lisa Tyler, and I'm in the Arkansas Division of Elementary and Secondary Ed, and I'm supporting Stacy Smith on her work with the grant, and we have our new grant coordinator with us as well, Amy Counts. Stacy, you want to wave?
Yeah, I'm Stacy Smith, Assistant Commissioner with Division. So we're excited to work with you guys on the grant.
Excellent. Welcome. And your sound is perfect now. Great. Next, California.
Hi, this is Jennifer Howarder from the California Department of Education, and I am joined today by Aline Allison Zaria, who is my administrator, and Susie Watt, who is lead on the contract for our evaluators. And then we also have, I believe on the webinar, although not in the room with us, our colleagues from West Ed, Sylvia and Tran, who will be our lead evaluators for this grant. And then currently I am the lead, but we will be hiring an additional consultant later on at the end of this year to take over.
Great. Welcome. Georgia is next.
Hi, this is Julie Morrell, and I'm the program manager for our current Circle grant, and I'll be managing the CLSD grant as well.
Excellent. Welcome, Julie. Great to hear your voice. Hawaii is next.
Aloha, good morning. This is Donna Lumkaga. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Curriculum and Instructional Design, here with our team from Hawaii.
Great. Aloha. Kentucky.
Hi, this is Dana Steele. I'm the director of the Circle grant, and I'll be the project director of the CLSD grant as well. I'm super excited about it.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you.
You too. Louisiana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brandy Brunson, and I'll be serving as the project director from Louisiana, representing Louisiana Department of Education.
Great. Welcome. Minnesota.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jenny Wozlowick, and I'm the State Literacy Specialist here at MDE.
And I'm Lee Nida. I'm the other State Literacy Specialist.
And joining us, I'm hoping, will be Doug Paulson, our Director of Academic Standards as well, who will be directing the grant.
Great. Great. Welcome to you all. Montana.
Hi everyone, this is Terry Barclay, and I currently am directing the CLSD, and I also direct the Circle grant for Montana. And we too are very excited.
Great, welcome Terry. Great to hear your voice too. All of you. New Mexico.
Yes, my name is Jared V. Hill, and I am actually the K-5 Plus coordinator for the New Mexico Public Education Department, and I'm filling in. Our literacy director is out on the road doing site visits, so I'm filling in for him.
Great. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
North Dakota.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is Brenda Ermintrout. I'm the coordinator of the Striving Readers Grant and also will be the coordinator of the CLSD grant.
Excellent. Welcome. Ohio.
Hi, this is Melissa Babcock. I'm a literacy specialist with the Ohio Department of Education, working on the Circle grant as well as the CLSD grant, doing technical assistance related to adolescent literacy and developing the sub-grant process.
Great. Welcome. And Rhode Island.
Hello.
Yes, hi, I'm Melvin. I'm the compliance lead for the Circle grant, role yet undefined for the CLSD.
Great. Welcome to you all. Did we miss anyone? Anyone not associated with any of those states, but also wants to say hello? That was excellent attendance, 100% from the 13 states. All right, great. All right, so now we will go to the next slide. and give you an overview of the national evaluation. And at this point, I would love the opportunity to pass the mic to Sylvia to give us some background and share some thoughts.
So, hi, everybody. I am just really excited to be here today to talk about the evaluation. Though the evaluation is mandated through ESSA by Congress, it is more to it than just a mandated national evaluation. We take this as an opportunity to gather information and to really be able to show and demonstrate the wonderful work that you guys are doing out in the field around literacy. It doesn't just start with CLSD, it started with Circle, but you guys at the state level have been doing literacy work for a very long time. And this national evaluation is our opportunity to really be able to document and to show not only our funders, but our leadership at the department, decisions that we make regarding the program, all of that data will be used to inform the entire process. So we're really excited about having this opportunity to talk to you about the implementation study as well as the impact study. Today, I believe we focusing on the impact study. You guys should be aware of the implementation study, but the impact study is where we captured the rigorous information and data that Tracy is going to talk to you about today, and help to inform policy decisions and practices moving forward. There have been questions around the funding for the program. As you know, with other programs that you manage at your level, funding is contingent upon appropriations each year. But generally, the practice has been that Congress will continue to fund, even if the program is no longer funded. It will provide appropriations for those programs that have been funded, those states, those grantees that have been funded. Generally, that has been the practice. So I think we have an opportunity to be able to collect information and data through the duration of the work that you're going to do, even beyond the national evaluation, collecting data that you will provide to us through your performance reports provides a holistic set of information and data about the program. We're really interested in working with you and talking with you. We'll be working closely with our evaluators to make sure that we provide you what you need and answer any questions that you might have. So we just really thank you for the work that you're going to do to help us to be able to tell the story of CLSD. So thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to the people here who really knows what's going on with the evaluation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, we appreciate that. And our study team, our evaluation team is really excited to be able to work among this collaboration between IES and OASE at the U.S. Department of Ed to tell that story, like you said, Sylvia. CLSD is a really interesting and important program because of the features of the program. It emphasizes the use of evidence-based programs and practices. It has specific goals for comprehensive literacy instruction and requires attention across all the grade spans from birth to grade 12. And I think we all share a sense that the program has really clear goals, but also a great deal of flexibility to design services to meet state and local needs. So with this in mind, as Sylvia teed up, the evaluation has two components. There's an implementation study that will allow us to understand implementation of the CLSD grant across state grantees and district subgrantees. And for those of you that are Circle grantees, the activities in the implementation study will look similar to what we're doing with you in partnership for the Circle implementation study. But special to CLSD is the impact study component, and that's to allow the department to understand the impact of CLSD, the grant program, on student literacy. So let's give you a bit more information about these components. And as Sylvia said, we'll spend most of our time today really talking about the impact study. But again, the first component is the implementation study. Key features of this, it'll involve all 13 grantees and all future subgrantees. We'll work with you to collect existing state data on student achievement and student demographic characteristics. That's down the line a bit. We'll also work with you to administer a brief online survey, about 30 minutes in duration, to all subgrantees, and that'll be, all subgrantees, and that'll be in spring 2021. So again, down the line a little bit. For this component, we ask that you encourage your future subgrantees to participate in the survey and that you provide us with the requested data when we get to that point. So the purpose of the impact study is to understand the impact of the CLSD grant program on student literacy, as I said. It'll include about 130 elementary schools across all 13 grantee states. So for the impact study, knowing that the program is broad and it's birthed to grade 12, the implementation study covers the broad range. The impact study will zero in on elementary schools in a subset of subgrantees. So we estimate that to include about 130 elementary schools, it means including or working with 20 to 25 districts or subgrantees, but that will depend on their size. So, just to be really clear, only some subgrantees will participate in the impact study. So the way that this will work, and we'll dig into the details in our next sets of slides.
One thing, so you think it'll be about 20 districts, and we're hoping each state would contribute one or two.
Yeah.
So all states would be represented.
Yep. Yep, that would be ideal. Yep. Within each of the districts that participate, AIR, the study team, will conduct a simple lottery to create two groups of elementary schools. One of these groups will implement CLSD-funded programs and services immediately in fall 2020, in that first year of funding at the local levels. We call this the first funding group in our presentation today, represented by the green schools. The other group, or the second funding group, would begin implementing CLSD-funded activities in fall 2022, so 2 years later. And we'll represent those with blue schools. Staggering the funding, the rollout of funding to elementary schools in this way is necessary for the evaluation, and to Sylvia's point earlier, will help everyone to learn and apply lessons from early implementers to other schools. The random assignment process that's part of the evaluation ensures that differences in later outcomes can be attributed to CLSD funding and not to features of schools themselves or their decisions to participate. So again, the impact study is the focus of our call today. We want to provide you with all the key information about how the impact study will work, how it is designed to really minimize the burden on all of you and your future subgrantees, and how we'd like to work together in partnership to make this happen. And then what we'll do is follow up with each of your states individually to incorporate the impact study option into your subgrant competitions. So I think we'd like to pause at this point and see if there are any questions in the chat box.
None yet.
Not yet. Right. Excellent. So then what I'll do, unless Mike, you have anything else to add at this point, I'll then turn it over to Ellie to dig in a little further.
No, I think we recognize that each state may be organizing its competition somewhat differently. Yeah. And so we're talking about sort of general idea, and then we'll want to talk to each of you individually to understand exactly how things work in your state.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, very tailored.
Yep. Okay, thanks. So as Jess said, we're going to provide some additional details now on the impact study, including explaining a little bit more about how it will work, what our requests of, and the benefits for you all as state grantees who are participating in the study, and our requests of and benefits for district subgrantees that will be participating in the study, as well as the eligibility requirements for them to participate. And we'll go ahead and start with how it's going to work, which I'm going to share in 4 steps that are aligned to your CLSD subgrant competition. So how will this work? probably a question you're asking yourselves. The first step is for you all to invite districts to apply for subgrants, just as you would if there were no study, right? So you'll have your subgrant competition. In this first year, you're going to set that up and you're going to make subgrant awards. Then districts or subgrantees that win the awards will implement the CLSD activities in years 2 through 5 of the grant. You're going to select districts to win subgrants that are aligned with priorities of the CLSD grant program, which focus on serving low-income, high-need students in diverse geographical areas. And I want to note that the participation in the impact study will not affect which districts in your state receive subgrants. That is totally up to you guys. That's under your discretion, and you'll retain complete control over which districts receive subgrants. But as you prepare to invite districts to apply for subgrants, we ask that you work with us to figure out a way to communicate to them about the opportunity to participate in the impact study. And that's really our only request of you in this first phase, is just that we come up with a plan for how we can talk to interested applicants about the study option. The second step is for districts to apply to subgrants based on the criteria you set. So again, this would be the next step in your subgrant competitions, even if there were no study, right? So districts are going to go ahead and apply. Those who meet the eligibility criteria that you set forth for a subgrant should all apply. But those with 4 or more schools are going to be, 4 or more elementary schools are going to be best suited to participate in the impact study. And again, we want to work with you to identify which districts will meet your subgrant eligibility criteria and that have 4 elementary schools that they would be interested in including in those subgrants. And we plan to encourage the districts to indicate their willingness to participate in the impact study at the time that they complete their subgrant applications. And we'd love for you all to help us with that. And we can offer, some support and reach out to them directly. We can come up with a plan where you reach out to them and then share that information with us. We're really open to figuring this out with you in a way that is as seamless as possible with your plans for your subgrant. So our aim in this second step is to have some eligible districts with 4 or more elementary schools indicate on their subgrant applications that they would be interested in participating in the study if you all choose to provide them with a subgrant award. So the third step here is for you all to review the district applications. Again, just like the last 2 steps, you would do this without the study, sort of CLSD subgrants in the wild, if you will. And you'll determine the number and amount of awards that you'll make. And some of these districts that get awards will be eligible for and interested in participating in the impact study. And so we will then work with those districts that win subgrants to finalize their participation in the study as a part of this third step. And it's possible that there'll be more districts who are interested than we can accommodate in the study. If that happens, we will try to include districts that are representative across the 13 grantee states. It's also possible that there are not enough districts that are interested in the study, or the ones that are interested aren't the ones that you all select to receive subgrant awards. And in that case, we would reach out to the districts that do receive the awards to encourage them to participate in the study once the awards come out. So by the time we get to the end of this third step, we'll have a subset of subgrantees, each of which will have 4 or more elementary schools that represent all 13 grantees and are interested in participating in the study. So now what? So in this fourth step of the impact study, this is the only thing that would happen in addition beyond your CLSD subgrants that you would just hold in general without the study happening. So in this step, we will randomly assign elementary schools within each participating district to be in one of 2 groups. So within each district, we'll randomly assign half of the participating elementary schools to receive funding in the first 2 years of the subgrant period, and those are the little greenhouses, and half of the participating elementary schools to receive funding in the second 2 years. So those are the little blue houses. So in this fourth step, I just want to reiterate that the district subgrantees will retain full control over which elementary schools are participating. It's just that the timing of the funding they will receive will be determined by random assignment that the study team will conduct. So let me stop here and check with Jess to see if there are any questions in the chat box before we.
There's one question from Deborah Riddle, who I think was Alaska. How many competitions are states required to run? And if I understand the question, but maybe we can unmute Deborah or we can come back to it to make sure. Is the question whether we're asking states to run two different subgrant competitions, one for prospective subgrantees who wouldn't be part of the evaluation and another one for others? We've been assuming that there would be one subgrantee competition where prospective subgrantees could indicate their interest in their application in participating in the impact evaluation if they are awarded subgrantee funds, and not as a separate competition. But there's probably flexibility in how this is done.
Yeah, and if I may just add, when it says receive funding on the slide, the grantees in your grant competition and the state's grant competitions, the awards will be made then.
Yeah.
The rewards will be made at that to the districts. Yeah. So it's not like there would be another competition that would align to the 22, 23, 24 time frame. So they would receive it, and depending on the way the state awards their money, the money would more than likely, depending on your practice, go into the district's coffers. But they will not draw down those funds if they're part of the Blue House part of the competition. But they would have the award. They would have they could have the funds if that's your process at the state level. They just would not be implementing their grant at that particular time.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. And I think that helps answer the next question, if there's anything anybody wants to add. And this is from Lisa Haley. Can you repeat the part about district's control about implementing in the two sets of elementary schools? And that's right. So it's the CLSD plans are implemented in these two sets of elementary schools. Just half of them implement those CLSD funded activities and plans in the first 2 years, and the other half in the second 2 years. But it's not based on a new competition or a different set of plans.
Can we tell from the chat box whether your answers were
sufficient
or pertain to the
There are
questions?
some other questions.
Oh,
very good.
Yeah. So I think as we go forward, we'll answer some of these. So districts will determine which schools are going to hold off for 2 years. Districts will determine which elementary schools will be part of their CLSD subgrant activities, but not which schools go first and which schools go second. That's the one part where we'll use a lottery to do the random assignment process that was depicted on this slide.
Do you think it might be helpful to discuss the rationale behind that from a research perspective?
Sure. Would you like to do that?
Sure. So the idea is that we want a district to pick elementary schools that fit the criteria, so they're appropriate for the program. But we want a lottery to decide which ones go first and which ones go second, because then we can be sure that the only difference between the ones that go first and the ones that go second are the luck of the lottery. They should be on average just the same in prior achievement, the principal's enthusiasm, the teacher's prior experience, the materials they already have. All of those will average out because of the lottery. And so then when we measure students' achievement after the first 2 years, if it turns out that it's higher in the schools that won the lottery, so to speak, we can conclude it was because of the CLSD program, and which is what we want to be able to conclude. If instead we let individuals hand pick even if you tried to pick to make them matched, you just wouldn't know what subjective judgments might enter in that would make it hard to draw conclusions. So the lottery is the fairest and best way to draw conclusions.
Thank you.
So there are other questions in here. Thank you, Mike. And several of them are asking why would any districts want to do this, and what would be benefits to them, or how does this work from a sort of motivation perspective? So maybe we should work through the next set of slides.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back to the questions that are in the chat, because there are a number of good questions racking up in there.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you guys for asking questions, and hopefully we can answer some of them in the next few minutes, and then we'll return to the ones that are still outstanding.
Perfect.
So now that you have a little bit more detail about how the study will work, let's turn to discuss our requests of you and our benefits for you as state grantees who would be participating in this. So our requests of you all are minimal. We have two. The first is that you incorporate the study option into your notices inviting subgrant applications. And the second is that you provide us with existing statewide data. So you should see up on your screen a timeline that corresponds to the CLSD grant years. And we're in the first year, right, 1920 school year. And in this year, our request is that you work with us to incorporate the impact study option into your subgrant competition. And we will, as I said before, we'll figure out what that looks like with each of you in some follow-up conversations. This would include identifying subgrant applicants that would be good candidates for the impact study and encouraging them to participate in the study. For example, by awarding some additional points to applicants who indicate their willingness to participate on their applications. Doing so will allow us to identify the sample. Again, we're looking for approximately 130 elementary schools from 20 to 25 districts representing all 13 grantee states. The second request a few years down the road is for you to provide us with existing achievement and background characteristic data for students in your state. This will allow us to examine the impact of CLSD funding after 2 years. So again, our requests of you are twofold. First, to incorporate the study option into your subgrant competition, and then 2 years down the road to provide us with existing data. By participating in this study, there are multiple benefits for you. The first, and probably most substantial, is that by staggering the rollout of the CLSD funds, you and the districts that participate in the study will be able to learn about and apply effective strategies from effective strategies and programs from the early implementer schools to those that implement in the future. And this phased approach is conducive to a lot of the continuous improvement efforts that I know many of you are engaged with currently. Second, we will provide you with a customized report on the impact of CLSD funding in your state that you can use to inform your future work related to student literacy. In addition, we plan to support your participation in the impact study by providing you with assistance to develop notices inviting subgrant applications that include the impact study option, and by ensuring that you retain full control over which districts receive the subgrants based on the criteria that you set. So we're really trying to design the impact study to work as seamlessly as possible with your CLSD plans. And we want to make sure that we're able to conduct the congressionally mandated study in a way that stays out of your way as much as possible. So we will, again, figure that out with you. So before we turn to the requests of and benefits for district subgrantees, let me just check in with Jess and see if there are any questions that would be useful to talk about as they pertain to the state grantees right now.
Yeah, so I think we do need to cover benefits and requests and eligibility for subgrantees, because I think a lot of the questions are why would districts want to do this?
Yep.
But to clarify, I think there are questions about timing of funding. Would districts, which I think we've started to address, would subgrantees still have 4 years of funding? The answer to that is yes, and subgrantees will have more than the elementary schools that are in the impact study. They'll also have, pre-K and middle schools and high schools, none of which are part of the impact study. And so the subgrantee plans would be comprehensive in that sense. They wouldn't be expected to just focus on the elementary schools in the impact study, but we would all be working together to make sure that the rollout of funding in those elementary schools was appropriate. Some of the, according to the design, but that relates to some of the other questions in here, and we'll go through them specifically, that are about the request that grantees will have for subgrantee applicants to plan for 4 years, 4-year plans for CLSD funded activities. And so the ask for some of the schools to do those 4-year plans in 2 years, or to do half of those 4-year plans, is something that we'll have to work out and make sure makes sense for a given subgrantee in each state, knowing that, you know, this will need to be fairly tailored to state context and those state subgrantee competitions. But that's a recurring question, is the issue of 4-year activities being broken up into 2 sets of 2-year activities for this subset of schools. I don't know if anyone wants to, Mike, if you want to add anything about that now.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And we understand that ordinarily the schools would get 4 years of funding, and perhaps the schools in the first group could still get 4 years of funding. And then the second funding group would start its funding in years 3 and 4. But then they would only have 2 years. So that is a change. Or you could compress the funding and give the schools more funding in the first 2 years, and then the other set more funding in the second 2 years that they would have gotten. So that is clearly something that has to be thought through
And worked out.
and it would be
There's flexibility
subgrantee by subgrantee. But the other thing that Jess mentioned is that we know that in most districts there will be a PK program in middle and high schools, and that will be it would go on as the subgrantees would have done it anyway. The only part that we want to redesign a bit is the timing for the elementary schools.
Yeah. So I think there's still clarification questions about that we'll continue to address. We haven't addressed all the specific questions in here, but maybe let's do this next section.
Yep.
And then open it up and continue to go through these questions.
Yeah. So our requests of subgrantees, much like those of you all as grantees, are minimal. So there's 2 requests. The first is that we ask subgrantees that participate in the impact study to abide by the lottery. And the second is that we ask them to complete some surveys. So again, you'll see the same timeline up on your screen that corresponds with the CLSD grant years. And in this year, kind of late in the year, after you've made your awards, and we know which districts receive those subgrants and are willing to participate, we'll conduct a simple lottery to randomly assign elementary schools into the first or second funding group. Again, so first funding group are those green schools up there, second funding group are the blue schools. The schools in the first funding group will receive the CLSD funds in the first 2 years. As Mike just said, you may all decide to provide those green schools, the first funding group schools, with funds in all 4 years. That would be just fine. And the schools that are assigned to the second funding group will receive their funds in the second set of years in the subgrant, corresponding to 2022-23 and 23-24. So our first request of districts is that they abide by these results. Our second request is that participating districts allow us to collect survey data in the first 2 subgrant years. So to document CLSD funded activities in the impact study schools, we'll administer brief, maybe 30-minute online surveys to principals or literacy leads in participating schools, regardless of which funding group they're in, and to teachers in grades 3, 4, and 5, which are the focus grades for the study. So again, our second request is just that districts provide us with contact information for principals or literacy leads and for teachers in grades 3, 4, and 5, so that we can administer these surveys. Fairly low administrative burden. So Districts that participate in the study will receive multiple benefits. Like you all in the State Department, one of the, I think, most important benefits is that they will be able to learn about and apply effective strategies and programs from early implementers to schools in the future. Again, we know this is consistent with continuous improvement efforts that a lot of districts are engaged in right now. Second, districts may receive up to $15,000 per participating elementary school, regardless of which funding group they are assigned. These resources could be a mix of financial resources or other supports if the district would find that appealing. And I'll say a little bit more about the compensation in another slide after I explain the eligibility criteria. In addition to these benefits, districts that participate in the study will support their work with minimal disruption. We'll try to align our work to their CLSD plans as best as possible. And again, just to reiterate, all the districts that participate will be in charge and in control over which elementary schools receive the funding, but the timing will be determined by random assignment. So, to that end, the criteria for districts to participate in the impact study are aligned to the CLSD subgrant criteria. First, districts must meet state eligibility criteria that you all set. Second, they must actually apply for a CLSD subgrant. Third, they need to indicate their willingness to participate on their applications, to participate in the impact study on their applications, or in some other way, let us know that they're interested. Somehow we've got to figure that out. Fourth, they need to have 4 or more elementary schools that they plan to include on their CLSD subgrant. And finally, they need to actually win a subgrant. So the only additional criteria that the impact study would require of districts beyond your CLSD subgrant competition is that districts indicate their willingness to participate, they let us know somehow, and that they are of a certain size, which is necessary for us to randomly assign elementary schools to the first or second funding groups. And we know that many of you have current Circle grants, and some of the districts that you fund through your current Circle subgrants are much smaller than this. And so we want to prioritize the larger districts that have 4 or more elementary schools to be as efficient as possible in conducting the evaluation and to ensure that the bulk of the resources from the CLSD program go directly to you. But we're definitely open to talking with you to see if we can include some smaller districts in the study if this is something that you're interested in. So if you're in a state that has a lot of small districts that you think would be eligible for a CLSD subgrant and you're thinking, oh no, how do I give them this cool opportunity to participate? Fear not, we can figure out some sort of plan to include some of your districts if there's resources for it. So we're happy to figure that out with you. So let's return now to the compensation that participating districts will receive. So as I mentioned a slide ago or so, districts may receive up to $15,000 per participating elementary school. And as I also mentioned, the districts that have at least 4 elementary schools are best suited to participate in the impact study. So that means that districts are eligible to receive $60,000 or more for their participation in the study. And what's pretty cool about this is that districts have a lot of discretion over how they use these funds. There are obviously some restrictions, like we don't want, luxury cruises or other things like that. And we're happy to talk these through with you and with interested districts, but there's really a lot of flexibility about how districts use these funds. And how, and if they would like to talk with us about some combination of funds and support, we can figure that out too. So,
and just on that point, in response to one of the questions, and because it's very related to what you just said, these funds are part of the evaluation budget there, which is what allows some more discretion over how to use these funds. One of the questions that came in is, where does the $15,000 come from? And so they could augment CLSD funded activities in other schools that aren't participating in the impact study, but they're not, you can think of them as broader than specifically program funds related to CLSD. So it would come through the evaluation, these funds.
Any other questions we want to address now, or?
Let's see. So should we pause and do questions?
We can pause and do questions, or we could talk next steps. Either is good. It seems like there's a lot of questions. Maybe that.
There was a follow-up about the money, so maybe we could just cover that. It's Deborah Riddle asked if it was the state evaluation budget or the federal CLSD program appropriation has national activities and evaluation set aside, and that's where the evaluation is coming from. So it's nothing that the states need to worry about or the districts need to worry about. This is money that the federal evaluation would be adding to participating districts.
And to just add to that, when Congress mandated the evaluation, I am sure, I can't speak for them, but I'm pretty sure that they had in mind that those national activities, their dollars were there in order to meet the requirements of the evaluation.
All right, so we have questions about, let's see, my chat box has gotten so small. Ellie, how's yours looking, I guess? Address some of these, I think we'll hear more when we open up the lines.
So one question is $60,000 on top of the CLSD subgrant award. Yes, that's correct. So this is compensation for participating in the study, and it is on top of the subgrantee award.
Right. Correct. So a couple questions. What happens if no districts in our state agree to participate? Is this is it mandatory? How mandatory is that? What does that mean?
So can I start with the mandatory piece?
Sure.
So in the notice inviting applications for the CLSD grant, we made note to our applicants that when you apply for the grant, that you would you are applying with the understanding that you would participate in a national evaluation. So yes, we anticipate and expect that our states who have the CLSD grant will participate. Now, to the question of what happens if you don't get another district, I will punt now to
So
you guys.
I think we really hope that every state will have at least one district that is interested. And our reason for this is we want to draw a conclusion about the program as a whole, not just in a couple of states. Right. And we think it is a good opportunity. And I think Ellie can be very persuasive. and we really want to talk with the districts and about how it would work, why it would be perhaps beneficial to participate, and how little disruption there will be. And then we'll just have to see. But this is a conversation. And so I think we shouldn't worry about that now, but as we start talking to districts, we'll see. That's going to be one of the next steps, that we would like to be able to talk to districts. We'll talk to you first, and then districts as they're thinking about this, that we don't want people to be signing up for something they don't understand. And we don't want people to say no before they have the opportunity to understand it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So maybe if it's okay, I'll just turn to the next steps, and then we can unmute, because there are a lot of questions in the chat box. I want to make sure we give everybody a chance to ask questions too. So then we can unmute and open it up to you all on the line, as well as, if you prefer to continue to use the chat box, that's great too. So immediate next steps are for us to reach out to you. So you can expect an email from me or one of my colleagues to schedule a time to connect by phone or video to discuss this. So this is where, you might say to us, oh, like, we already have our subgrant competition already written, like, what now? And we'll figure out a plan. Or, all of my districts have only one elementary school, and we'll figure out a plan. So, we'll be reaching out to you probably in the next week, and hopefully get on the phone quickly and hear from you what your specific state context is and how we can make this work as seamlessly as possible. When we connect, we're hoping to meet specifically about your subgrant competition timeline. We've had the pleasure of reading through the project narratives that you guys submitted as part of your proposal, so we have some sense of this, but we suspect things might have shifted a little, so we'll check in on that. We would like to talk with you about the eligibility criteria you plan to request for interested subgrantees, and if you have information about how many subgrant awards you expect to make, things like that. And then figure out a plan for notifying districts about the opportunity with you. So that's the immediate next step, and we'll be reaching out to figure that out. Once we've had a chance to connect with you all, we will figure out how best to be in touch with districts and to address their questions. So now I think we can turn to the Q&A portion and open it up to you all for questions about the impact study in particular, which again has been our focus today, or about the national evaluation.
And as we
generally.
do, because people have, made an effort to put questions into the chat, let's do some of those and we can intersperse. So here's one that we could start with. We've talked about this as well. So in order for us to follow this requirement, we would have to rethink our initial proposal activities and application process for the K-5 subgroup. Are you requiring a rewrite of approved proposal implementation plans for K-5? And maybe I can start with a piece about, I don't know, sort of degree and perspective, and then ask Cindy or Sylvia to add anything that you'd like at this time or later down the road. But one thing to keep in mind about this is the size and the scale. We think that we can do, for this component of the national evaluation of CLSD, a really good job of getting high quality information about the impact of these funds and the exciting activities that are done with them at a fairly small scale relative to the overall participation of districts and schools in CLSD. That 130 elementary schools, while each of them is important and each of them will be considered important in your states as recipients of these funds and important in the evaluation as participants in the study, that it's a small proportion of the overall schools that would participate. And so our sense is that though the rollout of the funds in the subset of elementary schools that would participate would perhaps look different in those districts than in other districts in your state that aren't participating in the evaluation, that it's on a small enough scale, that it's focused enough, that it wouldn't be thought of as a significant change or deviation from your overall state CLSD plans or from the subgrantee plans across the age spectrum. And I think if we're working in any states where there's a huge amount of interest and lots of districts would be participating in many schools and it really would change things, then I think we're talking about something different. But again, our intent with the design is to really spread this out across states anyway, as Mike said. So we're hoping that it seems sort of focused and contained in that way.
I agree. Before I'm gonna make a statement, then I'm gonna ask Cindy, as the person who is very familiar with the applications so far, if you want to add to it, Cindy. But so we have talked about what that might look like in terms of I keep talking to you guys, I'm sorry. What that might look like in terms of the applications that you have submitted and what may need to happen at the subgrantee level in order to be able to implement the study. So, I envision that you have submitted some very specific activities, but general activities as well that will be implemented, designed to implement it at the sub-grantee level. So they're going to give you applications to tell you how they would meet the goals and objectives of the state plan. And so there's some flexibility there that may cause you not to have to change your state plan. And we have had a conversation here that we need to work very closely with the evaluation staff so that if there are opportunities where we may need to make a change, that you can work directly with Cindy and her staff to be able to make sure that that happens, because we're asking you to do this. So we have to figure out how to make it happen as seamless as possible, but also to prevent you having to go back and do a lot of rework.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be working together as a team to try to figure that out. So you want to add to that, Cindy?
Yeah, I agree with Sylvia. We will just have to wait and see if there's a significant enough change that from what was submitted in the application and the budget, that it might require some kind of an amendment. But we've also talked about that because we are asking you to participate in this, potentially it would be kind of a modified or something where it would move more quickly than what typically happens sometimes with an amendment, wouldn't you say?
So yes, we're gonna work very hard to not make this difficult and create a lot of work for you if you have to modify your application.
Correct.
We just have to wait and see, but we'll work closely with you.
Yeah, and we will too. Did
Yes.
you want to add?
No, just that if in a particular state you make 10 subgrants, then only maybe 1 or 2 of those would be in the evaluation. So 8 or 9 would be following the plan as it was originally laid out, and only the 1 or 2 would be doing something. It wouldn't be very different, but it would be different in some ways, and that's probably not a big enough number, substantial enough, we hope, to trigger a requirement to change the plan.
And just a clarification on the design and kind of how this could look different, not in terms of the activities, but there was a question, this is from earlier. So are the Blue schools funding their efforts on their own until 2022, or are they waiting to implement until funding is granted?
And so they're waiting to implement until funding is granted. And so that the idea is to compare the schools that are starting up their CLSD work with very similar schools that are not.
Yeah.
And then after 2 years, that second set of schools would begin their CLSD work, and now they could begin the work informed by how things have gone in the first set of schools.
Yeah. There are a few questions about timing. I'm sure we'll hear these as we unmute. Deborah Riddle asked, what if we already have the application out? And we had a sense of that. So we'll be in touch and work with you to work out a schedule for just letting districts know about the option, despite the different schedule or the timing.
There was also one about when districts would receive the financial resources for participating, and we anticipate that we would pay that out to districts in 2 phases. So one would be at the time they agreed to participate, they would get half of the funds at the time that they signed a memorandum of understanding, and then after the first 2 years of subgrant activities, when we're sure that the schools in the first funding group are the only ones that receive the funds, and the schools in the second funding group have held off, they would get the other half of the funds. And I think we're happy to, again, work that out. We're anticipating 20 to 25 districts, so it's not so many that we can't tailor the approach to each district to meet them, where they are, and figure out a plan that would be best for them.
Yeah, not one size fits all.
Right. So we think of this as a partnership. It's a partnership with you and with the subgrantees to make this fit in each case.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we expect, just as you just said, that every case will be somewhat different probably.
Yes.
It's just the principle will be the same, but there's a lottery to determine the first funding group and the second funding group.
Kate Schultz has several comments in here kind of reflecting a concern again about the changes in the structure of the award that this could present. And so hopefully we've talked about some of that. And again, we'll be talking with each of you, your states individually, about what that could look like and how to minimize disruption. Julie Morrill said, I have no problem participating. I think we'll need to do a great job enticing them, meaning districts, to be willing. And we agree. I mean, we need to work together to make sure districts know about the impact study option, see it as the opportunity that it is, and also recognizing that it's not a fit for some districts or even many districts in the national picture.
So I wonder if we could go ahead and unmute folks now, and that way you don't have to furiously type questions, although again, you're welcome to do that. Just to make it so we can all hear, if people could please just mute themselves on their phones when they're not speaking, that will keep the background noise down and make it so everyone can hear. That would be great. So you're all unmuted now, and if you wouldn't mind just saying who you are, that would be great, and we're happy to take additional questions now. Oh, we've solved all of the questions.
No, there's still more in here.
Or maybe I just didn't really unmute you guys.
No, that's what
So, hi, this is Deb Riddle from Alaska. We were under the impression we had kind of a short timeline to get everything out and ready to go, and that it was 5 years. So we were really aggressive and got an application out and didn't know anything about this until just right now. And so I'm not quite sure. I know you'll probably reach out to us and kind of work with us a little bit, but you know, if we had known, we would have extended our date much farther than what we did, and would have been able to incorporate this into our application. So, I mean, any suggestions, or I mean, is there the big rush to get this because we have quite a bit of money this first year that we were going to get out to districts to get them started. Yeah, I guess just some feedback would be great.
So I do think we should talk right away. When are applications due?
Well, we were going to have them due next week. We've already had it out for a couple of weeks.
Well,
Yeah.
we better.
I'll send you a note after this.
Yes, exactly. Maybe we should just right now.
But we knew that the schedules would vary across states. We knew from Circle and talking with Circle Grantees, which informed Circle Grantees and a subset of Subgrantees, informed our thinking about the schedule for being in touch after CLSD awards, which we've done, almost as soon as we could from our end, which is not to say, in some cases schedules will align perfectly. In other cases, we'll be as flexible as we can be on our end to work with you to meet your schedules and to work this into the timelines that you have.
I have a question. So when you receive applications next week, and then you'll make decisions, I guess, within, I don't know, a month or two after that, then will the districts get their awards and schools might begin work this year?
Yes, that was what we thought. That's what I mean when I read it and when we got the award, and nobody said anything differently. So that's kind of how we were planning it, like a planning year.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is good.
Get the materials in line. So
this will challenge our thinking about how to adapt to different situations.
Yeah, different situations.
Well, and with the way we understood the funding, 95% needed to go directly to districts. Yes. And so, to not award subgrants to districts until the end of year one. Maybe something, how would we spend that now?
So because we got quite a large chunk this first year.
So I am not familiar with the processes for Alaska in terms of your internal funding practices. I can only talk about how we would have done it for our discretionary grants at the department. We would make those awards, and we would actually award the funds. We would just put a condition on it that they couldn't draw the funds down. They could not use the funds. So, I don't know your practice at your state, but and that's quite frankly what I would recommend The only thing that y'all would have to have a conversation about at your state level is if they're going to wait 2 years, the availability of those funds through the duration of the
Right, and
grant.
so, you know, see, and we worry, you know, because we're very small, and sometimes it's a struggle for our districts to spend the money down. You know, our concern is carryover. So if we have totally kind of missed the boat on this and we have quite a bit of money to carry over, is that going to be an option, or do we just send it all out to the districts? And if they don't pull it down, I mean, I don't want to send money back because we weren't able to help the districts be as efficient or effective with their programs and spending as they could be. And this is probably all something that you could talk with us individually about.
So I do recommend, I know there are some mechanisms in the place, and this has happened with our states, and it didn't have anything to do with the national evaluation, but it happens where the money cannot be drawn down. They just can't spend the money quick enough. So I will ask the evaluation team here that when you guys have those conversations, please engage us. And we will pull in our financial folks so that we can have a conversation with you about some options. Yeah, but there are options. Yeah. So you may want to bring this up to your financial folks there in Alaska, and we can help figure it out.
We have talked about it, and it is probably going to be a further conversation with the CLSD grant folks there.
Yes. Okay, we're here to help.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll be in touch soon, Deborah.
And we'll coordinate to the extent that we have information, just as you said, Sylvia.
Yeah. So we'll just have to just kind of figure it out, and we can figure it out.
Yeah. There's a question that Kate Schultz put in the chat box that I wanted to bring up because I wondered if others have it too. She said, I have concerns about a system having partial rollout of curriculum school to school. This is not best practice. And I think this is a question that we'll hear from districts, and one that we'll want to talk about with you and talk about with them. Lots of local education agencies and schools want to work in coordination and want to use communities of practice to support the work that they're doing. And so we recognize that when schools or teachers are broken up to do different things or to do the same things at different times, that can feel like it's sort of breaking things up, you know, in a way that's uncomfortable. And we're really happy to talk that through, because at the same time, there's also, you know, in our work as evaluators, in our work at other work as technical assistance providers, you know, we're really aware of the demands on educators at all levels of the system, on their time and on their energy and on their efforts. And so in some ways, having a staggered rollout for some feels a little more comfortable, actually. Feels like they can focus efforts on a subset and really try to work there and get things right, and then move on to the next group. And again, that doesn't feel comfortable everywhere, and it doesn't feel comfortable for every type of curriculum approach or literacy practice or professional development. But in some cases, and particularly when there's a lot of kind of experimentation in the air, you know, new things that are going to be tried, it's nice to be able to focus in a subset. And again, it doesn't affect the full spectrum all the way from birth to grade 12, just in a subset of elementary schools where there's sort of an approach, at least at continuous improvement. There's an opportunity to feel a little more like we're innovating and learning as we go. And again, it's not, you know, it's not meant to affect the entire grant program, but just in this subset. I didn't know if others have other thoughts.
Yeah, this is Kate. Actually, I'd like to address that directly if I could.
Great.
Yeah, so I completely understand what you're talking about giving pause. I think that's been actually a significant issue in our districts, is having staggered rollouts and a lack of systemic and structural pieces that happen when it comes to using high quality curriculum materials. One of our biggest policy pushes is this idea that a district needs to have the same curriculum for all students. For us, it's an equity issue, and I have some concerns about a district becoming in a lottery, and some schools start their implementation rollout when they don't have high quality curriculum. And then 2 years later, that's the 2 other elementary schools get the chance to roll out a high quality curriculum. And so, you know, if you see what I'm saying here, you've got districts, schools A and B that have high quality, while C and D sit and wait for 2 years before they roll out. So for, you know, I understand what you're saying about getting the chance to think and innovate. I do think, you know, I've got serious concerns about that particular piece, especially since we're talking about high quality, and especially since we're talking about literacy interventions for some of our most vulnerable students. So, you know, my furious chatting was largely due to those concerns. And also, just as a side note, I'm not sure the word opportunity is something that's going to go over well with our LEAs. For them, I think they'll see this as part of a requirement, and I'm not sure that an opportunity is exactly the word that will go over really well. So I appreciate the slides. I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys in the future and problem solving, because I do think this is a significant change for us in terms of funding structure and also just how we're going to roll out this grant.
No, I very much appreciate the concern about a common curriculum, for example, and I think there are a lot of reasons for thinking that having a common curriculum is a good thing, and that then teachers can learn new practices aligned with the curriculum and students are familiar with the curriculum. But implementing a new curriculum can also require substantial work by the district to put it in place and support faithful and strong implementation of the curriculum. And it may be that there isn't the capacity to do that well in all schools at once. And so implementing it in a smaller number at first and then moving to others could achieve a higher level of implementation. And also it could be that the challenges that hadn't been foreseen can be uncovered in the first schools, and then the second schools will have an easier path. I'm not arguing that that's necessarily always the case, but I do think there are efforts underway in various education reform efforts to try this out, to try things out in some places and not assume we know how to do it, and learn from the early experience. But again, this may not be something everyone wants to do, and we're not arguing that it should be or could be. I had a question also about the word opportunity, and I wondered maybe when we talk with you, we can come up with a better way of casting it, because we want to see it as something that districts want to do. And so imposing this on resistant districts is not our goal at all. And I guess I want to make that very clear. We hope that there will be districts that find this to be exciting, and that maybe it's just an opportunity to learn, because this sets things up so that we really can tell whether the new curriculum is truly effective. I mean, and so it's an opportunity in that sense. But I don't know how we should cast it. And we want to work with you, actually. What would be the best way to make districts at least think about the possibility? And but we definitely don't want districts to feel coerced. And the worst thing would be also for districts to do it begrudgingly, or that's not going to be. We want a real test of how this program is working, in places that want to participate in a real test.
And if I can just follow up, Dana had a question that I think maybe will help kind of put this conversation in context, just to remind everyone. We're hoping to get 1 or 2 districts from each state.
Yes.
So across all of the districts that may apply for and ultimately win a subgrant. We think it'll be a fairly small number. And so really it's just about working with you and working with the interested districts to figure out who is seeing this as an opportunity or whatever other better word we come up with, to test the activities that they plan to implement with the CLSD funds and figure out how well those have been implemented and what the impact is on student literacy.
This is Julie. I had a couple of thoughts. So in Georgia, we ask them to apply in a feeder pattern. So they look for, the high school and they work their way down. And my concern is that we spend a lot of time working on making sure they have effective leadership, because you can't implement reform if you don't have all hands on deck and everybody's all set. So my problem is that we do all that and then they're randomly assigned. So I think for a district that perhaps would consider doing this in 2 years, maybe they have a principal that's going to retire in 2 years or whatever, for whatever reason. You might be able to entice them then. But, when this is risky for them to do reform in the first place. And then they write this plan and they're all ready to go and everybody's, celebrating, and, oh, darn, 2 schools can't participate. We're going to have, as directors, we're going to have really solid slides from you to be able to implement with our awareness sessions. Or perhaps you could do a webinar and we can tell them during our awareness sessions when we're getting ready to roll this out that there's a webinar that you can watch for districts so they understand what they're agreeing to participate in. Yeah. So because we'll take heat at these departments when they really, or if they've had they get this, and then their superintendent says, well, wait a minute. We want that school to participate. I'm sorry, they were randomly assigned for 2 years. They'll have a short-term memory lapse.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Julie, to your point, we definitely don't want, if we can avoid it, districts to go into this with their plan and then to feel like, oh, the plan is changing without my awareness or whatever, which is why our hope is to let districts that are planning to apply for a subgrant know about this at the time that they're applying, so that they're aware of this. And we very much would like to participate in any sort of TA sessions or webinars. We're planning to put together a short video that districts can review. We're going to share, there were a couple of questions in the chat box about sharing these slides. We're going to share the slides. We're going to share the recordings. We have an infographic that helps to explain some of this. So we really want to minimize any heat you get, for sure, and give you guys tools and resources that may be helpful for explaining this, and also to just join you in those conversations to help explain the study as well, because we don't want you to feel like, I don't know, we don't want any angry phone calls about this. We want this to feel, again, like Mike said, something that some districts are excited about doing.
Also,
well, they won't call you; they'll call us.
Right, and we want to avoid that.
That's what by angry phone calls. Yeah, we're happy to take. I mean, we're not happy, but we don't want you to get angry.
Also, we've thought a bit about the feeder pattern issue that you brought up, because we've been doing some work studying the Circle program, where we know that feeder patterns are one way of implementing the program. And so we think we have some ideas about how things might work in districts that have feeder patterns, and they're using them as the basis for their work. And we're particularly interested then in districts that have 2 feeder patterns, so that, and we can talk with districts and with you when we have our conversations about how the feeder pattern approach works in your districts. We clearly don't want to break up feeder patterns. Would be absurd. And so, but we'll talk further about whether it might work in the context.
Another thing, this is Julie again. You know, we've got states, you know, Montana and Louisiana and Georgia. This is our third, will be our third round of this. So their data is not going to look like a fresh school.
Yeah.
If they're selected. So that may be something that you might want to consider in disqualifying some of these schools if they've already had, well, and we know that the current grantees, we're going to run a secondary competition later on once they've exhausted all their funds and that program sunsets for us. But even then, we didn't change our assessments at all. We didn't, our project assessments, much of what it is. And so they're kind of skewed, wouldn't you think?
And Dana asked a question about this as well. As a Circle state, now CLSD state, you know, the ways that they're thinking about funding. And we've been talking about this as well. The extent to which there would be additional or should be additional eligibility criteria based on not being a current, involved in the current Circle program. I think we want to just talk with each of you about that and look at the timing and look at sort of the, you know, extent of funding and sort of the saturation, I guess, in any given state of these sorts of funds, because we recognize that the programs are similar. And again, in some places, though, there will be it'll be a better fit for districts than in others.
And also, again, it may be that in one state, quite a few subgrantees were prior Circle subgrantees, but others are new, and we're only looking for 1 or 2 districts per state, and so it could be that those that are new that are the best fit. It'll just be a state by state and district by district exploration.
There was a question in the chat that I wanted to sort of bring up. I don't know if Petra Schatz wants to state it now that we're all unmuted, but or add to it. It says, what does participation in the study look like? What are the participants required to do? And we went over sort of nuts and bolts, you know, we're going to do surveys, but I think this also raises the question of, are we really doing, you know, is this an evaluation of the impact of the funding, of CLSD funding, knowing that those funds are used for very different things across states and within districts. And I think it's just a good opportunity, a good chance for us. Now I'm avoiding the word opportunity, even though I really mean it in this case. It's a good chance for us to confirm that that's what it is, that we're not asking participating schools to implement specific literacy practices or curricula, to participate in particular professional development, or to implement anything that's sort of in common or standardized in this particular case. Other evaluations look like that, but this one doesn't. This is really meant to kind of bend to and be about the very local instantiations of CLSD as they are planned in collaboration between states and their districts. It really is a study of the funding. And so aside from complying with the results of the lottery, if they're participating in the impact study, as Ellie said, and filling out our surveys, which we think aren't terribly burdensome, it's really doing what they would be doing as part of CLSD planned activities.
And in fact, the purpose of the surveys is to help us understand what is happening in the first funding group schools and what's happening in the second funding group schools, so we can compare them and see what's actually different.
Because we know there'll be so much variation.
In one district, it'll be about curriculum. In another, it'll be about professional development. In another, it will be about screening tests that are given to identify students for Tier 2.
There won't be surprises. We won't come back to districts participating in the impact study and say, oh, when you signed that, actually, what it really means is that you're all implementing the same program or something like that. Right. You know, we'll be. Our job is to study what is implemented, but not to determine or prescribe what's implemented.
Right. We really want to stay out of the way and keep the administrative burden low. I'm not sure that I mentioned it earlier, but I wanted to just say again, or for the first time, that we also plan to compensate all school staff for their time to take the survey. And, you know, we want to make sure that people don't feel undue burden over that. So we're planning to provide gift cards for staff to complete the surveys as well.
So we're nearing the end of our time together, although of course we'll be following up with individual calls as we've said. We maybe have time for another question if anybody has something burning or feels like your question in the chat hasn't yet been answered sufficiently.
That seems like good wait time.
All right, so maybe we'll give everyone a couple of minutes back at the end of this. We'll be following up with you, of course. We just want to thank you all for attending the informational webinar on the CLSD national evaluation. We thank you for your really good questions, your hard questions. We know you'll keep them coming, and you'll help us get sharper and better at talking about this with districts. Again, with your partnership, not separately from you or outside the bounds of how we seek to partner with you on this. We look forward to speaking with you and your team in the coming days or the coming weeks. We'll also follow up on this webinar to share our contact information, provide a link, a URL to a study webpage so that you and others on your team can access the recording of this webinar, as well as the other resources and information about the evaluation that Ellie mentioned. And as you have other suggestions and we have them and see them and we'll record them in the chat for materials that you think will be really useful for communicating with your districts, both through you and as we reach out, we really welcome your input on that. So again, we look forward to working with you on this study. We think it's really exciting. We thank you again for joining us today, and on behalf of the study team and all of us here in Washington, D.C., have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.